The story of Domino's Pizza. Imagine that you lose your father and his mother him. Imagine that you spend your in and out of foster homes and orphanages, living in farms almost without money. That was the brutal reality for the founder of Domino's Pizza. And the story of how he changed his life, and billions of dollars is. This is not a simple success story. Domino's faced several scandals, including processes of millions of followers on their sexual drivers, a viral video that all there, a literal practice because of their bizarre mascot. Sometimes the history of the Domino is a lie, but sometimes it is a true story of innovation and perseverance. It's full of controversies and various. I don't think Domino's complete story has been told so far. So, sit back and relax, as we are embarking on a journey through the insane history of Domino's. Chapter 1. The Problematic of Tom. Thomas Monahan was born on March 25, 1937 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. His father was a truck driver and his mother was trying to leave the school of tomorrow. Although the family didn't go well, they got along well, and it was a happy way of life for Tom and his little brother Jim. But it didn't last long. Tom's father soon experienced an in the abdomen due to severe ulcers, and on the eve of Christmas 1941, when Tom was only 4 years old, his father died. From that moment on, Tom's happy became a nightmare. The first few weeks after his father's death was a blur, but Tom vividly remembered the funeral home. And let his father die in the coffin, and shouting for his father again. Meanwhile, without Tom's father's income, Tom's mother had plans to work and got a job at Argus Camera Company, earning $27.50 a week. It quickly became clear that she could not pay to raise her 2 children again. And so she met Tom and his brother Jim in a foster home. His plan was to go back to the nursing school and get a job with better pay, then come back to take care of the children when she could pay, but it would actually take 7 years before that started, and the old homes understandably, fought with it and did not believe that Tom's first foster parents were very strict and argued with me. After 2 years, the foster parents decided that they did not want to take care of Tom and Jim. Then the boys were taken to a Catholic boarding school, St. Joseph's Home for Boys, which was a school and an orphanage. Later, Tom described his time there as intensely. On his first day at school, he into a fight with another player. In fact, Tom was well known and was persecuted, but had a strong temper and fought, often getting in trouble with others. Children. And even the teachers were brutal. You were whipped if your foot. While he was working internally, Tom used to dream of a very different future for himself. He one day told the child that, when he was older, he wanted to be a priest, architect, and the Detroit Tigers in turbases. The children laughed at him saying he couldn't do all that. But Tom had so much ambition. How challenging life was. Tom regularly told people that one day he would be rich and famous. And the boarding school instilled in Tom a strong sense of work and a mentality that no matter how difficult things are, you do not give up. In 1949, Tom's mother finally returned. She was now a sick nurse and therefore the elderly were married to her again, because she felt that she could finally pay to raise her children. She was dead. His personal problems were far from, and Tom had to do scribbles to help with the family's livelihood. He found a job selling drugs, a work harvesting cherries in the summer. And when he had time, he sold fresh products from door to door. In all these works, he tried to think of reasons why the process could be more efficient to earn more money, and that was Tom's first contact with sales and entrepreneurship, of which he really. But your life at home wasn't so good. He and his mother were in constant danger, and his relationship became more and more tense, until finally Tom's mother took him and his brother back to an orphanage. They were living with her just over a year ago, but one day Tom's mother collapsed and said that she would not want to be their mother and father. Then again, the two were coming in and out of different houses. Even at one point Tom's brother tried to start working with his mother while Tom was invited to live on a farm, where he spent extremely long hours. But it was on that farm while we were one day, that Tom was by an epiphany. Later, he said, standing up to the ankles in the mud, I saw that it was sliding in the thick, worldly thoughts when I should be focused on my spiritual search. I decided at that moment that I would become a priest. His time with the nuns so he signed up at St. Joseph's Seminary in Michigan and became obsessed when he was accepted in 1952. And Tom felt at home here. He thought he had finally found his own happiness in life. But less than a year later, he was expelled. Tom later that he was a little mischievous, breaking minor rules, talking when not, being a little turbulent. But nothing changed. Tom that the real reason he was expelled was because of a letter from his mother, where she asked why he never wrote much home. All other children wrote for their parents at least once a week. But since Tom had a difficult relationship with his mother, he worked more for his aunt. But the seminar had strict family values, and Tom was instructed to pack. He started crying. Your desire to be a priest has been broken. And he later said never before or since then I felt so devastated. To make things right, Tom had no choice but to go back to work with his manic-depressive mother. His mother also did not like to find Tom back at his door and almost they had their usual. Now, to be fair, they were both as bad as the other. Their mother was by having access to and mood swings, but that Tom himself could be extremely argumentative and be aggressive. It was a bad combination. They were also still with little money. Tom's clothes had holes just like the shoes, so he seemed to be embarrassed at school. The only thing they had was an old car that one day Tom would have rented without telling his mother where he was going. She was so nervous that she sent the police to him. Tom was so jealous that she decided to spend the night in jail instead of going home and apologizing to her mother. But he thought it was the end, just one more of his les. But it wasn't. Days later, while Tom was coming home, a car and a county sheriff told him that his mother had signed by placing him in a juvenile home until the 18 years. So, just to recap, since his father died, he lived in foster homes, then the boarding school with the nuns, then when he returned home his mother took him to the farm and now he was. Tom was angry. In his eyes, his mother had ruined his chance to become a priest, and now, he had not any crime, he was being arrested and convicted as a criminal. He couldn't understand why he was being treated like a criminal. Tom stayed in the bathroom during his first year of high school, and these were some of the darkest moments of his life. But luckily, Tom finally got good news. When her Aunt Peg found out where he was, she petitioned the kids to get his help. His uncles were kind to him and, for the first time in a long time, Tom's life seemed more and normal. Tom continued to do biscuits to earn money, he worked on a bowling alley, was a waiter and many others. But between work and being distracted by girls, Tom didn't do so well at school. He didn't care much about it, and at some point, he didn't even know he'd graduate from high school. It was only when he met his aunt making for his graduation that he did not want to disappoint her. So Tom begged his teachers not to stop him and he did just enough to last himself in his class, but he graduated. The quote from your yearbook under your photo was, "The more I can be good, how much more I want, but I can still do something sensational." Shortly afterwards, Tom enrolled at Ferris State College and, this time, he worked hard. He improved his grades and was accepted at the University of Michigan. He didn't have the money to pay the tuition. But it was when that his college would be paid if the council. Then Tom spent the next few days doing medical exams, doing tests, and sign papers, with the of join the office. Except when he was almost finished the registration process, that one of our members called the Marine Corps. Tom said, "Wait, is that the Marine Corps or the Army?" The guy looked at him unbelieving and said, "They're the Marines, you idiot." But at this point, Tom decided to move forward in any way and use his time in the Naval Marines to work in his physical and mental health. What, to be fair, he did while he was there. He also read many books of self-improvement, and later in his life he knew that he was to Marines with Marines. During his time in the Navy, however, Tom about his future empire. He in all the cars, houses, and places we could buy. And so in 1959, when Tom received an honorable dispensation from the Marines, he worked to help build his army. At that time, he had saved about $2,000 to pay the college tuition. Once again, Tom's life was not planned. Before he could register in college, Tom worked on a quick enrichment scheme in every penny he had. It all started when Tom met a charismatic man who said if he called John Ryan and who worked in the oil tank. He charmed Tom with of the great deals he did and told Tom of a new project that he was on vacation and for which he just needed help. By means of an elaborate story, this con man tried to persuade Tom to take his money as a co-owner of an oil tank, which the guy to have profit in just a few weeks. Of course it never happened. Tom's monthly cash and Tom got only $15. Above all, Tom began to have strong headaches and sometimes the pain was so strong that he could not concentrate on anything. Another. He'd only find out later that he had a broken and infected eardrum. But once again, despite Tom worked hard to cover every penny he could and finally tried to enroll in college, only this time he had to postpone because he didn't have enough money to pay. He thought he would continue saving money even more and try to survive next semester. As you can see, the dream of Tom's life was really just a series of events, and be repeatedly. When he found out he was progressing, something new seemed to change. Of course, part of it was self-inflicted, as its argumentative nature or ingenuity to fall in love with the petroleum gulf, but there is no doubt that Tom had no effect on his return. Faced with this new setback, Tom began to think about ways to make more money. And he soon got a job at a distributor of and started selling signatures of and quickly managed to conquer many customers themselves to protect their employees at their doorstep. That was Tom's first contact with the delivery business. He barely knew that in a few years he tried to stabilize the industry by crossing pizzas at the people's door. But this experience in the newspaper was crucial, not just because he made money, but for the lessons he. As soon as Tom proved his value, the apostle began to teach him more about the commercial side of things, like accounting and dealing with. At some point, the killer even had to explain to Tom what was a memo. But it was here that Tom of the administration of a business, and he that not only knew it, but he seemed to be good at it. And that's when, out of nowhere, we had an even business opportunity. One day, Tom's brother, Jim, came to him with an idea. An idea that would change everything. Chapter 2. Dominick's Tom's younger brother, Jim, was full-time postman, but to earn extra money also served in a man's property restaurant called Dominick Diavati. While I was there, Jim called Dominick saying he owned another restaurant in Michigan that was closed months ago, and he was trying to sell it. The restaurant was named after him, called the Dominicks, and it was a small pizza place that also sold sandwiches. But Dominick didn't with him and wanted to sell him as soon as possible. He was just asking for $500 for the store, but that also came with more than $2,000 in that the buyer would have to take. Still, it was a relatively cheap price, and when Jim saw it, he got excited. He approached his brother Tom and asked if he wanted to enter the store together, since Jim didn't think he could do it alone, but they could do it among them. The store only opened 7 hours a day, from 5 o'clock to midnight, so they the shifts between them so Jim could continue his other work as postman, and Tom would have enough time to study and perform his own. Then win-win, and Tom was on board. None of the employees had much money, but they took the same savings they had and also took a loan of $900 from the post office cooperative, which was enough to buy the early Diavati store and their services. Dominick Diavati allowed the Tom to continue using their name for the business, so it would still be called Dominick's, and Diavati also shared with them their campaign and quickly how to make real pizza, since neither Tom nor Jim. The then two workers to make deliveries, who to work only by commission. They then officially opened Dominick's for business on December 9, 1960. Their total sales in that first week totaled only 99 employees. And to be honest, it was amazing that they won so much, because they didn't even have a phone in the first week, so we count on customers coming through the door. But since they put it all in operation, things started to change, and the sales amounted to $750 a week at the end of April, and I would like to tell you that this is a two-way story. They say that most of their sales went to a nearby college, and so, when the semester ended and students lost the campus, sales fell to just $200 a week. In a short time, Jim began to work much less in the store, which inevitably led to several long walks including one in which we started playing dishes in each other. And in just 8 months after the opening of the store, Jim gave up completely, despite the fact that it was his idea originally. But Jim felt that the store required much more work and time than he expected. And since the business was not very lucrative at this time, Jim did not want his full-time employment to fully to the business. He wanted out. Tom to give Jim the fusker they used to the pizzas in exchange for their half of the deal. Given that this business would be worth billions of dollars, exchanging 50% ownership for an old car should be one of our imaginable. Because Jim would be security and then electrician, and he would never have much financial success. But at the time, in the early 60s, I thought Jim had done the best deal. Tom was with 100% owned by a business in stock. And so, Tom had no choice but to intensify his ministry at Dominick's after Jim's. That once again that his college partner was, because he had to run the whole deal now he didn't have Jim to run. But, as always, Tom began to cry. He said, at that moment, I made the decision to commit myself body and soul to be a pizza. Tom knew it would be difficult. At one point he was so broke that he was living in the store for a while, sleeping there at night. He simply didn't have the money for a cheap meal and would only eat his own pizzas if they were or if a customer didn't take it and was away. Tom was working 100 hours a week, but he was progressing. He finally managed to get 2 more to start making pizzas, while still profiting $400 a week. And when I wasn't in the store, I did market research. He experienced almost every pizzeria in the mountains, noting what each one did well and what he did not. During his research, Tom had the option to start a conversation with the owner of an old Italian local shop that had the best pizza supplier that had ever tasted. And I hope he offered to show him how he took his advice. Tom then implemented this for himself in the Dominick's, and his pizzas began to have a better taste, which that sales increased even more. With things improving in this first shop Dominick's, Tom began to think that he could do the same thing in other college cities. Actually, someone even told him about Mount Pleasant, the house of Central Michigan University and his 5,000 students. Of course, with his brother Jim the deal, Tom would need someone else he could rely on to manage the original Dominick store if he were to open another store. 160 tons of furniture. And the good news was that he was about to reveal his future tomorrow. The bad news is that this kid would destroy everything that Tom loved so much. Chapter 3. A terrible business. A man named Jim Gilmore lived in the store one day, and Gilmore had already one of the most dangerous pizzerias in the city, and then the two men began to talk about the business. Tom was with the knowledge and experience of this older guy in the industry. Gilmore was that he died twice because of a drinking problem, but he said he got over it and now he wanted to go back to the game. Tom took the bait and asked Gilmore if he wanted to hire a team, and Tom explained his idea of opening a second store, but he needed someone to run the first store. I barely knew Tom that was what Gilmore thought Tom would suggest when he the store that day. Gilmore said he would accept Tom's with that our partners were involved in the business. Tom knew that he needed help, and the deal was that Gilmore would put $500 for 50% of business property, though Gilmore knew that he had no money at the moment. Tom was so to die, he thought Gilmore could pay him later, so he ended up negotiating half his company without initial payment. And he would never get that money. Now, this agreement with Gilmore was not a total blow like the all-man scheme in which Tom worked in the past, but this deal with Gilmore would later be as the most unilateral partnership of history. C. Gilmore made his wish to draft an agreement for the partnership, but he all the present and accepted as Tom's responsibility. Gilmore also said he was looking for his day job as a dorm cook. But since Dominick's only opened at night, he told Tom he'd have a lot of time to run the store, which means Tom could open a second pizza place in Mount Pleasant as a. In theory, everything seemed good. It was an accident. With Gilmore in charge of the first Dominick store, she became much less profitable. Sales were a third down. And Gilmore began to ask Tom to send more money to start the bills. Tom was so busy with the second store that only later that work Gilmore gave up managing the first store. The quality of the pizza grew enormously and the money was wasted on things like a pinball machine. Tom even that Gilmore was to be taking money out of the building, even though he couldn't prove it. Now, to be fair, Gilmore gave Tom a lot of advice, so it's not like he's done anything completely, but I didn't think Gilmore had the urge to do so much dirty work. Tom was working without stopping, most of his hours of vigil 7 days a week. Meanwhile, only Gilmore seemed to work when he wanted to. In other words, Gilmore was taking advantage of Tom. Eventually, however, Gilmore's health increased even more and the two men about society. Gilmore once again proposed a ridiculously unilateral offer, where he would receive much more money than he deserved, but luckily this time Tom had the good sense of his own and therefore his own. And Tom left the disastrous partnership with Gilmore. Of course, that didn't mean Tom's problems were solved. He was back on his own now, and in fact, he was in debt because of the previous agreement. At some point, his testified he might be better asking for bankruptcy, but Tom swore that instead he would die to get out of it. And, in fact, Tom continued to work almost every hour of the day, often coming home around 4:30 a.m. That said, Tom found a lot of excitement at work, and the work was finally starting to lead him to good news. One night, in February 1962, Tom left a trainee behind the office when he decided to go and order a pizza for himself. And it was on that delivery that he a girl named Margie. Now even though Tom used to be shy with the girls and didn't have a date at least a year ago because of how busy he was with the store, he was so by Margie that he was gathering to accompany her. Shortly afterwards it was Valentine's Day and he a pizza in heart format for her. On the third date, he knew it was with her that he wanted to marry. And a year later, they were. At this point Tom was 25 years old, but Tom told Margie that he would be a millionaire when he was 30. She laughed, but he was talking to me. He couldn't stop working until he his goals. Tom's work sometimes caused problems for them. One night, Tom was so by work, he drank a lot and he could be a bad kid. He ended up yelling at Margie, then, when she was afraid, it only made Tom even more angry, so much that he accidentally knocked down the Christmas tree. The next morning he swore that he would never drink of that dish again. Tom always had an explosive temper and lack of self-control, and the drink exacerbated it. Tom wrote his word about the drink, but soon he would see himself in another discussion, this time with Dominick Diavati, the man who Tom and his brother originally his first pizzeria. It was because of Dominick Diavati that Tom's store became Dominick's, and that was the problem. Chapter 4. A change of name. Dominick Diavati called Tom and said that he had to stop using the name Dominick's, because Divati still changed the name to his other restaurant, and his personal customers were confused now. It is true that they shared the same name, they were in different places serving different customers. Then Tom felt it was unlikely that it was such a big problem. Tom felt that the biggest problem was that Diavati was jealous that Tom was trying to have more success with his shops than the Diavati was having. Diavati would be a little resentful of having left the store for a relatively cheap price. Whatever the real reason, Diavati required Tom to stop using the name Dominick's. Now, as we know, Tom always had a little temper, and when Tom heard that, Tom had a situation in which he Diavati of being in a hurry and said that his piece of pizza was terrible to his Everything was and they could have said things in a very friendly way. Tom's statement that Diavati his invitation to contact Tom and inform him officially that he had to change his name. The reason Tom was so reluctant to change his name was because he was turning Dominick's into a well-defined brand in the area. Changing name at that point, nobody could change his business. So Tom went to a publicity agency in search of. The first obvious question was to rename it after Tom. Then use your last name and call it Monahan's Pizza. But I really didn't have the same touch. While the advertising agency advised Tom to wear something similar to that of Dominick, since that's what everyone was used to. In addition, this was at the time when people were looking for answers in the phone list, and if Tom used a very similar name to that of Dominick, people would still find his company if they wanted the name Dominick on the list. So Tom put in charge his followers of certain names with strange sounds, and they went through at least 100 different versions, but none of them seemed right. Until one day one of the names of Tom delivery drivers broke out. Domino's. Something about it snapped, and Tom yelled enthusiastic, "That's it. That's it." He danced by the store. And from there, it wouldn't be Dominick's, it would be Domino's. That they also needed a new logo, and therefore they chose a literal domino and chose bright colors that stand out. As Tom had 3 stores at the time, they 3 points in the domino, and Tom that every time they added a new store, they could add a new point to the logo. The fact that Tom thought about it just shows that neither Tom himself had any idea how things were about to get crazy and how many stores he would soon be managing. Start your business with Shopify. Before to the next part of Domino's history, let's talk about you. The fact that you are watching MagnatesMedia probably means that you are working on business, and all of these entrepreneur skills. You may want to open your own business. But where do you start? Well, that's where Shopify comes in. Today's video sponsor. Shopify makes everything easier than ever for entrepreneurs to start and expand their companies. Shopify offers all the options to create a professional website, starting to sell your product or service, receive updates, and accept requests from anywhere in the world. Now, a large part of Domino's success in recent years has come from its focus on selling online and via mobile, and that is something Shopify makes it extremely easy. You can simply create a website equipped with mobile devices in minutes, customized as you wish. I love how Shopify makes it simple, since no technical experience is required. And the great news is that if you use the link in the table below, you can get a free Shopify tool to test it for yourself without. Just click the link below now to see how Shopify can help transform your idea into reality. Chapter 5: The Ascension of Domino's. Tom was now directing your business, which now became Domino's, and, thanks to his work ethic, the well-advanced locations to the campy, but of course it will still be a very small operation in general, with just a few shops. One night, half of Tom's team didn't show up, so Tom decided to limit the menu of the night to increase the attendance of requests. Curiously, however, this led to a crucial discovery, since this situation is one of the most lucrative nights so far. Tom that it would make sense to have a simpler menu even when they had the whole team back. The next day, Tom the data and that more than 80% of the dorm requests were for pizzas of 12 stars, so Tom decided that from now on that would be the only way they would sell. For people who have smaller pizzas, they would probably buy only the 12-inch anyway and therefore pay more. And for people who love more than a 12-inch pizza, we should buy several pizzas. Offering a package instead of 5 would make it possible to produce better and faster pizzas, as well as money for having only one ticket delivery option. Later, Tom ended up a 16-foot pizza too, but for a long time Domino's only had these 2 sizes, small and big. In the same way, for a while Tom had only one drink, Coca-Cola, since it was the most popular meal. Tom also started offering only one kind of crust, reduced the amount of coverage for only 6, and removed any main dish that wasn't pizza from the menu, like submarine sandwiches. From then on, Domino's will have a much simpler menu. And by removing the less lucrative items, Domino's an immediate increase in profitability. Even though they were less, people didn't ask for less food, they just asked for more of the most profitable items. And Domino's became much faster and more efficient in making food now that they had a simpler menu. And that night that Tom was forced to leave the menu because of the lack of courage was, in fact, And from that moment Tom would always remember that ability to seek happiness possible. The favorite menu of Domino's for dealing with just a few offers, allowing them to become great in these interesting things, rather than just median in many different things. The simplest menu also allowed them to move faster. Which brings us to another unusual decision, but very successful, by Tom: focus on free delivery. Tom distributed thousands of advertising brochures on the latest fast delivery of hot pizza. Now, of course, some other players also received delivery, but at that time that you could earn a lot of money only with the delivery. Most employees normally only offered it to get some initial customers before they could pay the delivery service. But Tom was that he could make delivery a fundamental part of his business. And so Tom took the daring decision not even to offer happy dinners in exchange for his shops and instead became one of the biggest pizzerias to fill almost in delivery. After the delivery of these services, by eliminating the restaurants known as most restaurants, Domino's could keep its shops much smaller and therefore cheaper to operate. This also that they did not need waiters like other pizzerias. And Tom that since the delivery business was quite difficult, it would be at the entrance of. And he was right to say that the delivery became its differential. Pizza Hut was known for its dining restaurants in its restaurants, Little Caesars dominated the orders and Domino's concentrated. While Tom's focus on deliveries brought many new requests, he also created a new set of problems, as the fact that it was difficult to keep the pizza warm and crispy while driving further. So, Tom started thinking about a way to solve the problem. It provides several manufacturers with a corrugated cardboard box with holes that were more flexible and insulating. He simply wanted a box that could hold the heat longer, but he also had to put the weight of other boxes on top of it without the lid falling. The pizza groped at the top or bottom of the bottle. But Tom's new cardboard design could solve this thanks to his, since the corrugated cardboard could absorb more moisture than a single piece of paper and thus of cheese from being erased. The idea, however, the manufacturers told him that it would not be possible to massively design his design, to which Tom wrote, "Is American technology putting space in orbit today, and you are telling me that you can't?" He insisted they find a way to make their idea work and they do. And it was a game turn. And so Domino's is credited with the first use of corrugated cardboard for pizza boxes, instead of the layer of coated paper that was used for years. Tom had created an ideal pizza box and thought that could be produced in bulk. And that Tom to continue innovating new ideas to try to explore other areas of business. Like Domino's is also considered the first network to use isolated delivery scholarships to help maintain healthy food for longer. Tom also rotating ovens in the store, which could accommodate more pizzas in less space than conventional ovens and thus produce more pizzas faster. In other words, Domino's was becoming more and more efficient. And with things really improving for Domino's, Tom began to think of franchises. Even at this point he 3 shops and ended up going well financially. Tom didn't just want to work, he wanted to build a building. And he had already begun to see the success that several other fast food networks had done with franchising. In fact, Pizza Hut had already franchised 145 shops in 1966, and so in 1967 Tom, and one of the main reasons why Tom was having a lot of success with franchises is that he focused on putting shops close to colleges and military bases, both locals with many customers in a small area looking for a healthy solution. Very quickly, Tom the demographics of university students and where the demand was, and soon Domino's was opening more and more shops near the college campuses. He also that it was better to be in the back of the campus, where stayed the dorms, and not in the front, where he most retail stores. The colleges were also very because it was very cheap to advertise there when they chose a new store. Tom could vehicular some cheap at college prices rather than paying conventional interest rates. Tom thought he had a winning system, which was about to. Chapter 6, Debt. With things going well and this new franchise model in force, Tom wanted to open a new store every week. And in 1969 he almost disappeared. Domino's opened 32 new shops. It soon became clear that most of them were failing. And quickly the company about a debt of $1.5 million of all these new non-profit stores. Tom had expanded too fast. And in order to avoid bankruptcy, Tom had to give control to the bank, whose was to the costs, and cut prices in the quality so that only the situation and several franchisees to enter with judicial actions. The company couldn't afford its creditors for months. They began to enter with lawsuits against the company as well. The bank's failures to make things worse, and Tom resumed control and decided to change his business model. From now on, instead of charging franchisees a large unique fee to open a Domino's store, they work so they don't have a fee, but first you had to successfully manage a Domino store. This unconventional practice really worked very well. That franchise owners would know what they were getting into first, and that they had experience and capital to make their stores a success. Another great advantage was that Tom set up a big central place where all the ingredients and supplies would be prepared and then delivered to all the other Domino's shops. First of all, that Tom could buy raw ingredients in very low volumes and thus get a discount. But it also that instead of each individual store having to buy and prepare their own ingredients on site, these were prepared at this central point and then returned to the different Domino's shops, that everything was on quality. This system worked extremely well because that every Domino's pizzeria could be much smaller, because they didn't need more than a large deposit to prepare all the ingredients on site. As a result, they wanted to buy cheaper tickets to the shops and were also cheaper to manage since Tom had this central hub to prepare everything, and then all the shops needed to do was mount, roast and cook. Which, in turn, makes it easier for them to work with larger requests. Tom's innovations like that costs and increase efficiency. And to be fair, even with business growth, Tom used continuous market conditions to try to understand things even more. Other pizzerias all over the country to determine whether there was anything he could learn from. At the end of the day, however, after that brief scare in which they counteracted many charges, Tom worked to pay off the company's debts and settle things with his creditors and franchisees. The future now includes for Tom and Domino's. They had a better system to protect franchisees, their stores were managed more and had a centralized monitoring system that quality. At the end of 1969, Tom had 42 stores of Domino's Pizza all over Michigan, Vermont, and Ohio. In 1978, Domino's had 200 stores. And things were about to get a lot more crazy. Chapter 7, Electric Drivers. The delivery has always been the main factor of differentiation of Domino's, but in the 1980s its rivals have already invested in deliveries as well. Pizza Hut, supported by its capacity PepsiCo, converted thousands of its restaurants into delivery shops. That they were in a very serious competition, and the pizzas were fine and they were happy. But Tom had an idea to stand out of the crowd and, in 1984, Domino's started pizza delivery in 30 minutes, the pizza was. This boosted sales, as it was a win-win for customers. You have fast delivery or pizza included. This great led Domino's to further accelerate its expansion. In the 1980s Domino's grew from 300 to 5,000 stores and became the network of fastest-growing restaurants. Domino's also globalized and opened its first store outside the United States, first in Canada, but then in many other countries around the world. They also finally began to expand their menu even more, offering more budgets and items that do not have pizza, like chicken wings, as well as an extra-large pizza of 30 slices called the Dominator. This success allowed Tom to carry out another kind of exercise. So when I left, he wanted to play for Detroit Tigers. Well, in 1983 he won the team and, a year later, they won the World Series. And that, things were great for Tom and Domino's. The delivery time in 30 minutes or winning a Chinese pizza continued to work very well for a while. Sales increased and Domino's ended up for its fast delivery. But in 1989, things had a dark and they began to create a big problem for Domino's. It all started when a 17-year delivery driver lost control of his truck, crashed on the road and died in a car accident. The newspaper of his city published the story and some questioned whether the reason for the accident was because the delivery drivers had to deliver pizza to customers in less than 30 minutes, which means that some drivers were accelerating. And then some of these journalists took the story, and soon national journals began to publish it claiming that Domino's Pizza had a deal delivery problem. Soon a report showed that more than 20 occurred Domino's drivers. Another story soon ended a collision with a Domino's delivery driver and a couple. The wife died and her husband got brain damage. The family, the owner, blamed Domino's strict time of delivery policies and driver's advice, claiming that the driver was forced to run to reach his destination, which is what caused the tragic accident. And Domino's ended up paying $32 million. Another process of great repercussion in 1993 involved the driver of a Domino's who the red signal, another driver and causing damage to the spinal cord. Domino's $79 million ended. The public cry was wrong, and consumer groups, even to protect people against dangerous delivery, a group created to lobby against Domino's practices. Domino's, that what was once an extremely positive marketing for them, were now turning into a very public relations package, where people thought their drivers were at high speed or unsafe delivery. From then on, Domino's decided to change its policy and started offering credit cards instead of delivery in 30 minutes. Of course, for those who have already or lost their lives, they are a little too late. Chapter 8, Noid. Well, at the time when Domino's the idea of 3 minutes or 20, Domino's launched a new mascot called Noid, a strange section of the troll type with characteristics. Since then, it has been described as one of the most reasonable mascots of all time. Because instead of a powerful mascot, Noid intended to be the hero, a powerful character to cause problems and be the villain. Here's how the Fast Company described it. Noid was a crushing animal, bawling, perverted, salient teeth squeezed into a pizza's glued to the body, a character similar to Hamburglar. Throughout the late 1980s, Noid appeared in a series of Domino's, where he paid customers for evite Noid and promised that their pizzas were Noid-proof. And yet, in spite of his crazy, bizarre situation, Noid was a great success among many. It was just the right amount of strange and unique to say, and they were even making a line of recording, video games, and conversations with Noid. But then all of a sudden, everything changed. On January 30, 1989, a German man named Kenneth Lamar Noid a Domino's restaurant in Georgia and took 2 owners of Domino's as employees for more than 5 hours. Kenneth Noid was mentally ill and that section evite the Noid was directed to him and destined to antagonize him. Kenneth Noid complained how Tom had changed his name and demanded payment. But then, while he kept Domino's records he got hungry and let one of them make a pizza for him. While he ate, the Jews happily. Even if they were not harmed, after Domino's removed Noid from her. The damage was done. It was hard not to let Noid go to that terrible event. Domino's denied that the attack was the reason why they withdrew Noid, but since Noid was popular before that, it seems impossible to believe that this was the reason. This was not the end for the strange mascot. The Noid returned to Domino's TV offices in 2021. Hey, guys, before we get to the next part of the story, I know that many of you have asked how to fix those videos. So, in recording this video, I put a how to make videos like MagnatesMedia link to the editing software I use and a link to where I get songs and sound effects. But if you really want to see step by step how these videos are made and everything behind the scenes process, I am in a course that will show everything from start to finish. It is not yet for sale, but if it is in your interest, you can enter the waiting list using the other link in the table below, as I will send some invitations soon. So, yeah, I found the links below, so let's get back to the story. Chapter 9, The Boycott. With Domino's continuing to open new franchises worldwide, Tom was now a very rich man. And he decided to use part of this money to support charities that his strong Catholic faith. The fact is that he did this under something called the Domino's Foundation, and it would end up causing a lot of controversy. It all started when Tom donated $110,000 to the committee to end the state-funded abortions. He even used live money on TV to fight state funding for abortions. Tom then also cancelled a fundraising organized by the National Organization for Women that could take place on a property of Domino's when he thought money would help pro-choice credit institutions. In response to all this, the delegation called a national boycott to Domino's in 1989. The boycotters that Tom was trying to channel the pizza to limit the reproductive rights of women and promote their own political goals. When a spokesperson of Domino was questioned about Tom, he didn't want to do it alone. He was talking about and was really annoying people. The problem was that Tom was publicly the leader and of Domino's and, therefore, publicly taking strong political positions would always be divisive. But almost a year after the boycott, Tom made the surprising that he was planning to sell Domino's. At the time, he denied that it had something to do with the he had, but many years later it was. Later, he said, "I felt that a boycott like what they did could have an impact on many people whose livelihood depended on Domino's. I didn't want to put our franchisees in danger because of the positions I wanted to take. I didn't want to make the company a target." Tom also said that his decision to sell was because he wanted more time to fully dedicate himself to his credit cards, and couldn't do that while driving a giant pizzeria network. The sale took much longer than Tom had planned, mainly because Domino's sales began to fall a bit and Tom decided that he could not leave the company while he was in a recession. But, in 1998, when Domino's had thousands of shops, Tom moved the company to Bain Capital, Mitt Romney's private equity company, for $1.1 billion. Not bad for a boy who was by his mother and started without anything. For Domino's, you think that Tom would take the position of CEO would end any controversy for the company. In fact, there were still many new controversies to come. Chapter 10. The viral video. It was Easter Sunday of 2009 and two board of Domino's decided that it would be funny to say they were doing things with pizza ingredients that would be given to customers. In a series of 5 videos called Sick People of the Domino, the two Domini violated all the health codes you can imagine, like sneezing on a sandwich and other things. As soon as Domino's, they will be in touch with the YouTube asking for the copy of the video, but the YouTube said that we need the copyright of the holder, which were the two that killed him. I went to Domino's to find out who they were. Since they were dumb to their faces in the videos, it didn't take much time to locate them. With the help of people in YouTube, in 3 hours, Domino's asked who had made the video. Unfortunately, Domino's to confirm that no request was made by customers during the period when the videos were made, and it was just a catch instead of actually the contaminated food to customers. Domino's fired both, and I thought that was the end. It wasn't. On Tuesday, the video showed 250,000 views. Until Wednesday, I was in 1 million. And no one would survive for more than 2 million views before being removed. Twitter was talking about it. News sites caught it. And if you typed Domino's in Google search, 5 of the results on the first page would refer to gross video. It was a perfect look for Domino's. And they had to deal with it. Thus, Domino's president recorded a video requesting to customers and that the store had been fully sanitized and that, from now on, they would review their contracting practices. But of course, many more people have the original video than Domino's explanatory video. And to be fair to Domino's, there probably wasn't much more that they actually did. But that did not change the fact that the image was in people's mind, and the damage to the surface of the mark had been. In fact, a national study by HCD Research showed that 65% of the respondents who asked Domino's Pizza were less to do so after watching the video. And this was not the only time the social media had problems at Domino's. Domino's was also criticized after a photo became viral from Domino's buying extremely cheap sliced bags in a supermarket. That they sold in stores with a ridiculously high marking, claiming to be their own slices. But to be honest,